Is your bank account enough to last you at least 3 months without doing anything? Is your car's gas tank enough to last you until next week? If gas prices triple tomorrow, will you still be able to afford to drive? If the price of that piece of clothing you've been eyeing for so long doubles next month, will you regret not ordering it today? Have you even considered the stability of your current job? What if your company goes under? Do you have a plan B? Hearing this, some might think, are you crazy? It's just a war between the US and Iran. Iran is miles away. Is it really that big of a deal? No exaggeration, it is. I'm telling you, it absolutely is. Think about it. How did the Great Depression of 1929 come about? Tariffs, war, and an oil crisis. If you gather all three, you can summon a disaster that engulfs everyone. Missing even one won't work. But look around right now. Count them. Aren't all three gathered in an instant? Tariffs. We have had 2 years of relentless fighting. War, the US military just got directly involved. Oil crisis. 1/5 of the world's oil is now completely blocked. So, is this just a minor skirmish between nations that will end quickly? Let's think back. Who really won during previous crises? When the pandemic first started in 2020, the whole world panicked. Planes were grounded, factories shut down, and oil was plentiful, but nobody wanted it. Back then, one person secretly started buying oil company stock. For years, the world laughed at him, saying he was old and didn't understand tech stocks, only buying outdated stuff. And then what happened? The pandemic ended, the economy recovered, and what did he do? He sold all his profitable stocks, Apple, bank stocks, everything. After the stock market crashed last April, when the whole world was buying at the bottom, he didn't budge. He held massive amounts of cash in those oil stocks. How many people laughed at him then? Just a week ago, countless people were saying Warren Buffett was old, crazy, had missed out, and his reputation was ruined. And now, the US military has entered the fray. The Strait of Hormuz is blocked, and oil prices have absolutely skyrocketed. Now tell me, who wins? And who wins when a Great Depression hits? Do you think a Great Depression is a bad thing? For ordinary people, it's definitely a devastating blow. But for politicians who have written their scripts in advance, and for capitalists who know the script beforehand, it's a once-in-a-century opportunity to make money. In my video last June, I told you that if Iran and Israel really went to war, it would ignite global inflation. Because oil is the lifeblood of industry. When that lifeblood is drained by a war, everything that depends on it will die. Every bite of food we eat, every piece of clothing we wear, every takeout meal we order is inseparable from oil. So this isn't just news of another Middle Eastern conflict. It is a war that slowly turns your money into worthless paper. And now, the war has escalated, and the US military has personally intervened. This is no longer just an oil crisis. It is an AI-driven war. You heard me right. The US's attack on Iran isn't just about oil. It's also about providing a lifeline for AI companies struggling to stay afloat. It's a four-pronged approach. What does this mean? In this video, which I started working on during the holidays, I aim to thoroughly dismantle the core issues behind this war. Why is the US so determined to attack Iran? Why are AI companies more anxious than the Pentagon? Why will the closure of the Strait of Hormuz directly impact your salary next month? And most importantly, where should we hide our money to avoid being wiped out in this massive wealth reshuffle? I spent a lot of time researching these exact questions, and I will explain them to you one by one over the next 20 minutes. It's actually very difficult for me. I'm not a prophet. I'm simply a businessman and an investor. If I say what I see beforehand, some people will think I'm selling anxiety. If I say it after the fact, some will say I'm just using hindsight. So I will say it in advance. Even if just one sentence helps you avoid a pitfall, I will be satisfied. If you're willing to support me, you can subscribe to my channel. And if you forget everything after listening, just hit like on this video so it saves to your playlist for you to review anytime, because the world is about to change very quickly. So fast that you might not have time to react. When the tide goes out, you'll at least know if you're the one swimming naked. Today, we will thoroughly dissect this game. First, do you know just how deadly the Strait of Hormuz is? I won't go into the boring and complicated stuff that you already know. It's actually very simple. Think of it this way. The entire Persian Gulf is like a big belly filled with countries that make money by selling oil. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, and even Iran itself. And the only outlet for the oil they extract to sell to other countries is the Strait of Hormuz. This strait is not only narrow, but also extremely shallow. Simply put, those supertankers weighing hundreds of thousands of tons have to carefully navigate through this strait, one after another, very slowly. Even a slight deviation or a slight increase in speed could turn them into the Titanic. And this critical waterway is right below Iran. So, in my video last year, I said that if Iran were unhappy and blocked the strait, global oil prices would skyrocket, because they wouldn't need aircraft carriers. They could just lay missiles and mines in the waterway, and the oil ships passing through would be instantly wiped out. Simply put, Iran controls the world's energy supply. If Iran blocked the strait, over 20% of the world's oil supply would be cut off immediately. And now, Iran fighting the US is like David fighting Goliath, except they can't win. So sure enough, Iran turned the strait into a death trap. Anyone who dares to cross this waterway will be bombed. And because of this, oil prices, exactly as I predicted last year, surged by 21% in just a few days. Some might ask, didn't Saudi Arabia and other oil-producing countries already have backup waterways? If this strait is blocked, they can just go around it, right? Yes, but do you know what the reality is? Even if you run all your ships at full speed using the backup waterways, you can only transport about 6.5 million barrels of oil a day. And how much oil does the Strait of Hormuz normally transport a day? About 20 million barrels? It's like when the water pipes in your house are cut off. Hundreds of households in the building have to line up downstairs with buckets to get water, and that amount of water simply isn't enough. So when the strait was blocked, it wasn't just the US stock market that plummeted. The stocks of the entire Asian market, such as those of China, Japan, Indonesia, and Taiwan, all crashed. South Korea and Thailand even experienced market circuit breakers. Why? Because most of this oil is transported directly to Asia, now that this oil can't get out. The biggest impact is naturally on the entire Asian region. Renting an oil tanker from the Middle East to China now costs 6 or 7 times more per day. Insurance premiums have also skyrocketed by 50% overnight, and many insurance companies are simply refusing to insure ships at all. So what are you going to do? And that's not all. Qatar is one of the world's largest natural gas exporters. Natural gas is more complicated than oil because it requires specialized terminals for unloading. It relies heavily on the Strait of Hormuz to transport it out. Therefore, the natural gas supply is currently disrupted, severely impacting heating and power generation across Europe this winter. In other words, while this appears to be a conflict between the US and Iran, the most affected are actually Asia and Europe. So who is the biggest beneficiary this time? Many people think that oil-selling countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Russia have made a fortune from the soaring oil prices. But many don't know that one country has sold more oil than Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Iraq combined. That country is the United States. Now think about it. If you want to buy oil today, can you take your local currency and go to the Middle East to buy it from those big shots? Sorry, but who are you buying oil from? They're only accepting US dollars. Simply put right now, if you don't have US dollars, you cannot buy oil. Without oil, your factories can't operate. Planes can't fly, cars can't run, and you can't even produce chemical fertilizers. Without fertilizers, you can't grow crops. So for a country's economy to function, it needs to secure oil. And to secure oil, it needs to secure US dollars. In the past few years, many countries around the world have been converting their dollars into gold. This caused gold prices to skyrocket and the dollar to plummet. But now the situation has entirely changed. Now the world is short of oil, and oil prices are soaring. If you want to buy oil, you must convert all your money and assets into dollars. But what if you only have gold? Before the war, countless individuals and countries sold their gold and converted it back into dollars. Because of this, in my video last year, I said that if this war broke out, gold would plummet and the dollar would rise. And now, all of this is gradually becoming a reality. Before the war even started, gold plummeted by 21% in just 2 days. The dollar also surged by 4%. In other words, the oil crisis has already occurred. 4 years ago, when the US raised interest rates and everyone said the US economy would deteriorate, our US stock investments nearly doubled. 3 years ago, when the Hong Kong and mainland real estate markets collapsed and the stock markets crashed, everyone was saying to stay away from Hong Kong stocks. But our Hong Kong stock investment tripled. 2 years ago, when US stocks were soaring, we gradually sold off our stocks and converted them into gold and silver. Last year, when US stocks crashed due to tariffs, our gold and silver investments doubled or tripled. So what about now? Are we simply using current events, news reports, and financial statements to predict the situation and then investing our hard-earned money? Is it really that simple? How the situation develops only helps us predict the general direction. We are not from the future. We don't have a crystal ball to predict the specific changes in timing. We are not the ones who create the market, and we cannot control it. In other words, a correct general direction only increases our chances of success. Therefore, we must learn to use charts to plan our investments. Because only charts can clearly reveal the subtle clues of capitalist strategies. To put it simply, even if I see that the US is determined to cause a gold price crash to drive money into US stocks and bonds, I might still buy gold. Why? Because a gold price crash is just a general indication that the US might do this. It's likely to succeed, but it might not. Most importantly, only the ruler can decide when to act. What we can decide is to follow the big player's entry and exit from the subtle clues on the charts. This improves our own investment success rate, More importantly, even Warren Buffett, who may know the inside story, loses money. Since losing money is an inevitable part of investing, we have to set a winning strategy. Even if I lose money 4 out of 5 times, our annual return still doubles. Why? Because I've increased my margin for error. What does that mean, and how exactly do I do it? Here at Stewardship Finance Academy, we have developed a completely improved investment system to help you navigate these exact scenarios. If you want to protect and grow your wealth in 2026, you need to join the SFA Free Stock Investment Masterclass. Spots are very limited, so check the first link in the description to register as soon as possible. Now, let's get to the most important part. What I mentioned earlier were just the consequences for different assets after Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz. If you watched my video last year, you could have avoided those consequences. But now I'm talking about the consequences after the US military intervenes. Everyone, why did the US get involved in the fight? They say it's to liberate the Iranian people and give them freedom and to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Is it really that simple? I'm a businessman and an investor. See money, not politics. This period is the time since last year when I'm most likely to start repositioning myself in the US stock market. Why? Because the US AI sector was on the verge of collapse. What does that mean? When the US bombed Iran, the administration didn't immediately take command or give a speech. Instead, they were arguing with an AI company online, threatening to use the entire US government to shut down the company. You're waging war, so why are you sanctioning your own AI company? Because this AI company set a precedent by refusing to share its technology with the military. Hearing this, you might think AI is just for helping us with homework, drawing diagrams, and making PowerPoint presentations. Actually, AI is already being used in warfare. For example, the AI used by the military can automatically identify high-ranking officials and pinpoint which buildings might be weapons depots. It then recommends specific bombs to the military. It can even calculate how many civilians would die if a target were bombed, and then give the most cost-effective advice. Do you understand? AI is deciding who lives and who dies, and this is no secret experiment. Major tech companies have already sold their AI technology and data to the military. So if you use AI, it's just a tool that obediently helps you write emails. But if a country uses it, it becomes a devastating weapon. So why did the administration ban companies that don't cooperate with the military? It's because American AI companies were running out of money. Companies like OpenAI spend trillions of dollars every year buying chips, building data centers, and poaching the world's most expensive talent. But what about the money these companies earn? What about profits and returns? If it was only a few $100 billion, when will they ever actually make money? If you were an investor in these companies and they kept telling you they could change the future, but were burning through astronomical sums of money every day, wouldn't you be anxious? The problem is, they couldn't sell it. There were no customers willing to pay enough for it. So what do? They wage war. Think about it. Who are the most generous customers during a war? Nations. Today, the US military wants an AI system that can identify missile launch sites. How much is the budget? If you can build it, they'll give you $200 million if $100 million isn't enough. Nations don't care about costs because they cannot afford to lose a war. And once AI proves on the battlefield that it can accurately identify targets, plan drone routes, and make decisions 10 times faster than humans, other countries will also want to buy this technology. Because if my country has this technology and yours doesn't, aren't you just waiting to be attacked? And what happens? Their civilian companies will follow suit. For example, if I'm making autonomous driving technology, I'll think, can this military technology be used to identify pedestrians on the road? If I'm in logistics, I'll think, can this route planning ability help us optimize costs? This is exactly what happened in the 2003 Iraq War, when the dot-com bubble burst. A bunch of internet companies were on the verge of collapse. But then war broke out, and the US military suddenly started buying up civilian internet technologies like satellite communications, databases, and network systems. Those dying companies suddenly came back to life. At the time, some media even said that Silicon Valley was more of an arsenal than a business center. War gave the internet a second life. And now, history is repeating itself. AI needed a war to survive. So the governments cracked down on AI companies unwilling to cooperate with the military. It isn't because of temperamental personal grudges. It's about finding a way for the entire American AI industry to survive. This war has 4 distinct benefits. First, AI companies couldn't find customers before, but with massive military orders coming in, they'll have money. Investors will be happy, and the AI bubble crisis will be delayed. Also, the current US government is backed by military-industrial complexes. The war to fight, they'll make a fortune selling arms. Second, it provides an excuse to cut interest rates. Do you know what the Federal Reserve did after the Iraq War in 2003? They cut interest rates 13 times in a row. Why? Because the war was over, uncertainty was gone, and the economy was better. Then they could stimulate the economy with monetary easing. The US now wants to replicate this script, win a decisive victory, and tell the world it's safe so they can lower interest rates. Then, as borrowing becomes cheaper, the economy recovers, and the US government becomes the savior. Only then will they have a chance to win the midterm elections. Third, it keeps money at home. Everyone knows that if the US lowers interest rates and I can't earn money by depositing it there, I won't leave it there. This money will flow out to places with higher returns like Southeast Asia. But if the Middle East is in chaos, Asia lacks oil and Europe lacks natural gas, then isn't the safest place in the world still the US? Investing elsewhere might offer higher interest and returns, but my money could disappear at any time. Lower US interest rates are better than being financially wiped out by a war. So this money will obediently stay in the US, buying US Treasury bonds and stocks. This solves the problem of unsold US Treasury bonds and stock market crashes. Fourth, it takes over the Middle East. If they quickly deal with Iran, they can control Middle Eastern oil, and then who will dare not use the US dollar? So, do you understand now? One war for massive benefits. AI survived, the Fed could lower interest rates, money stopped flowing out, and the Middle East was secured. So, there was the oil crisis, the war, and tariffs. If these three things continue for a long time, could it trigger an economic depression like the one of 1929? Many people think the Great Depression was strictly because of the stock market crash. But the more important reason was the tariff war waged by the US. At that time, the US imposed high tariffs on the world to protect its industries. Other countries retaliated by imposing tariffs on the US. As a result, global trade plummeted, and no one could sell their goods. So, who was the first to collapse? Not the US, but Germany, the strongest industrial power at the time. Germany's exports to the US plummeted by 65%. It couldn't repay its debts to the US. Its economy completely collapsed, and the unemployment rate soared to 30%. In the end, it had no choice but to build tanks and airplanes, launching World War II and the US. Because it was far from the battlefield, it only sold arms and made a huge fortune from the war. It eventually replaced Britain as the world's superpower. So even if the US attacks Iran now, the fire won't reach the US mainland. Because of the vast distance, it's a situation where the US can attack you, but you can't attack them. The impact extends directly to the economies of all of Asia and Europe. Then what happens? The cost of doing business worldwide becomes several times higher than in the US. Think about it. If you open a factory in Asia, rising oil prices and transportation costs, plus tariffs to the US, will instantly increase the price of your products by 3 or 4 times. But if you move your factory to the US, they have their own oil, and there are no tariffs, so their costs remain almost unchanged. So whose products will consumers worldwide buy? American, of course. This leads to fewer and fewer orders for factories worldwide, thinner and thinner profits, eventually forcing them to close down. Alternatively, you could move all your technology and manufacturing facilities to the US. Moving to the US eliminates tariffs and currency exchange rate issues, provides subsidies, and even grants US citizenship. This is the biggest benefit of this US strategy. They don't need to make their own products cheaper. They just need to make the rest of the world as expensive as them, or even more expensive. And in this process, everyone outside the US will experience 2 devastating words. Stagflation. Simply put, the economy stagnates and everyone runs out of money. But at the same time, inflation continues to rise. In a normal economic downturn, prices should fall. But if the current price increases are due to high oil prices and high production costs, not because everyone has more money, then central banks can't use interest rate hikes to curb inflation. Raising interest rates will only make it harder for businesses to borrow money, leading to more bankruptcies and increased unemployment. So what happens in the end? The whole world prints money. You print, I print, and everyone's currency depreciates. The exchange rate hasn't changed, but your purchasing power has. The money you have buys less and less. Those in debt, like the US government, are ecstatic, because after printing money, its value decreases and their debt decreases. Where you could have borrowed $1 million to buy a car, now you can only buy a wheel. This is using inflation to resolve debt. And what about you? If you only focus on saving money in the bank, you will be the one being exploited. Because the longer you save, the more your purchasing power diminishes. So behind this war is a game of accelerating a massive reshuffling of wealth. For some to win, others absolutely have to lose. So, are we the winners or the losers? Hearing this, you might still ask, don't countries around the world have oil reserves? Shouldn't that last for several months? Yes, many countries have reserves. But a country can only guarantee you can buy oil, not that oil prices won't rise. Just like a country can guarantee there's rice in the supermarket, not that rice prices will stay stable. So who will guarantee your standard of living won't decline? Who will guarantee you can still afford your mortgage if you lose your job? Who can guarantee that your hard-earned savings will still be enough to buy all these things a year from now? Nobody. You have to rely entirely on yourself. So you might say then, I should quickly invest in something to make my money grow. Wouldn't that help combat inflation? Everyone, especially in times like these in 2026, you absolutely cannot invest blindly. If you want to receive our proven strategies as soon as possible, you need to take action. If you think investing is a skill you'll inevitably need to learn sooner or later, then you absolutely must register for the SFA Free Stock Investment Masterclass. Check the first link in the video description to join the Stewardship Finance Academy community and change your financial destiny. Of course, there's a third way. Like the US, go to war and plunder the resources of other countries. This is the last thing I want to see because it could easily turn into World War III. Okay, everyone. Today's content was packed with critical information. If you have different opinions, feel free to leave a comment and let's discuss it rationally. I'll continue to share free information about becoming rich, an entrepreneur, and an investor to achieve financial freedom every week. If you don't want to miss it, remember to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. Then generously share this video with the people around you. Sincerely wish all the brothers and sisters who like this video will achieve financial freedom soon. I'll be happy if you can find even 1 or 2 useful quotes in today's content that can help you live a better life. Okay, see you next week. Bye.